A little while ago, I made a video comparing the Canon FD 50mm 1.2L to the regular 50mm, and I recently picked up a 55mm f1.2 Aspherical, and I thought I'd make a video comparing that to the regular 55. The price difference between the aspherical and non-aspherical is even more vast than the 50L to the regular 50, so I wanted to see what you get for your money on an even greater scale. Similarly to when I did the 50 versus the 50L, you would think just by looking at different photos of them that they are the same size, and they are not. If you don't have the two lenses side by side, it is really hard to see any differences at all, but there are a few key ones. The aspherical is actually slightly taller than the regular 55, and an easy way to be able to tell this is by looking at the top of the focus ring. While the focus ring on the regular 55 ends right above the rubber on the focus ring, the aspherical actually has a little segment just above that rubber. The aspherical also has a longer focus throw, but it's only about 20 degrees. But if you turn the lenses to show the infinity marking on the right side, on the aspherical, you can see the markings on the left side. So that's, if there's a photo from that angle, it's a pretty easy way to tell that it's an aspherical. Other than that and the nameplates though, these lenses are identical. They both have 58mm filter threads, and they both actually have the same maximum diameter, so focus gears made for the regular 55 will fit onto the aspherical. Before doing any research on these lenses, I assumed that they had the same optical design, just that the aspherical had, well, an aspherical element. This is not the case though, as the aspherical actually has an entire extra element to its design. The regular 55 is 7 elements in 5 groups, while the aspherical is 8 elements in 6 groups. Something very cool to note about the SSC Asphericals is that the aspherical element in these lenses had to be ground by hand. There weren't any machines that could ground an aspherical element at the time. They changed this with the Ls. All of the Ls are machined, but any of the SSC aspherical lenses had to be made by hand. That is incredibly interesting to me personally, as I really enjoy how much precision and hard work had to go into making these lenses. If we're gonna talk about the 55 aspherical though, we gotta talk about thorium. Thorium is a radioactive element that lens makers used to achieve a higher refraction index while maintaining low dispersion. And in layman's terms, you get better images, because that makes no sense to me. The use of thorium was pretty common to see in lenses until its ban in the mid to late 70s. And before you get all up in arms about the harm of using radioactive lenses, you're fine. Just don't sleep with it under your pillow, and don't grind down the glass and serve it on a sandwich. Also, to my knowledge, the only 2 Canon FD lenses that used thorium in its elements was the 55 aspherical and also the 35mm concave version. Over time, thorium will cause lens elements to become yellow, which will shift your white balance, as well as reduce the transmission through the lens. This can be super easily corrected though. Simply get a UV lamp with a good power output, like this one I found on Amazon, and shine the light through the lens with a mirror underneath. This process should take about a day or 2, but then you're good for another 40 to 50 years. You can also use window light for this, but I don't really suggest it, as this process can take weeks, if not longer. If you want to know more about thorium in the Canon FD lenses, I highly suggest you check out Media Division's video on the Canon FDs. It is fantastic. They're actually the reason why I haven't made a video on my own Canon FD set, because I just simply couldn't do it better. If we're looking at these lenses wide open at 1.2, The aspherical is clearly sharper. At 1.2, the aspherical also has very nice colors and a great fall off. The regular 55 is good wide open, but it is clearly softer and a bit smeary. And if we zoom into these frames, we can see this much clearer. If we stop these lenses down to 2.8 though, the two images become almost indistinguishable. The aspherical's aspherical element will help correct for corner aberrations, but I really don't know how important that will be for your video, especially if you're shooting on vintage lenses anyway. While the aspherical element will help correct for aberrations in the corners, it does mean that you will get some onion skinning in your bokeh. I've never really known onion skinning to be a desirable trait in lenses, but it's never really bothered me. But if your audience is that worried about a little onion skinning in your bokeh, then your story must not be very good from the start. Also, I had to crank the highlights all the way down on the aspherical to even see a little bit of the onion skinning, and it barely even showed up then. But if you absolutely cannot stand onion skinning in your bokeh, then go for the regular 55 and you can save yourself a few $1,000s. Cutting on both of these lenses is exactly the same depending on which one you go for, and it seems to happen about 1/3 to 1/4 of the way into the frame. And if we stop down these lenses, we can see the octagon shape in the bokeh from the 8 blades of the iris. The flares on both of these lenses are fantastic. When I tested the 50 versus the 50L, I wasn't super pleased with the flares on the regular 50mm, but that's not the case with the 55, because the regular 55 has some amazing flares. The aspherical has very similar flares to the regular 55, just with a bit extra drama. I personally prefer the flares on the aspherical, but it's not nearly as different for me as it was from the 50 and the 50L. While the aspherical has a longer focus throw, it does not mean that it has a shorter minimum focus, as both of these have a minimum focus of 0.6 meters. The aspherical does have a floating element design, which is supposed to reduce aberrations at close focus. And here we can clearly see less aberrations on the aspherical. Being that both these lenses are vintage photography lenses, it's pretty much guaranteed that you're gonna see a bit of focus breathing, but it's not nearly as much as you would think. Both of these 55s showed a surprisingly low amount of focus breathing. It's a very reasonable amount of breathing, even when compared to modern lenses, and it's actually quite a bit less breathing than you get on the two 50mm 1.2 lenses that I tested previously. The price difference between these two lenses is pretty much the reason why I'm making this video in the first place. The regular 55mm is actually great value for money for a f1.2 lens, and you can pick this up for between $250 and $350 in mint condition. The aspherical, on the other hand, well, that's about 10 times the price. The aspherical typically sells for between $2,500 and $3,500 in mint condition. This price can go up even higher too, depending on which version of the aspherical you go for. The blue AL marked versions of this lens typically go for over $5 grand. I even saw one of these lenses listed for $13,000, which is just ridiculous. So, do you think that the 55mm aspherical is worth it compared to the regular 55? Is the history and the hand ground aspherical element worth 10 times the price? Let me know down in the comments. I think most of you are gonna say no. Personally, I don't think the aspherical is quite worth that price difference when the regular 55 gets so close, but I will be keeping the aspherical in my set because I already have a full set of the Ls, which are also aspherical lenses, so might as well keep it consistent. Anyway, that is gonna do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please consider liking and subscribing. It really does help this channel out, and I will see you all in the next one.